the first pick.
Welcome to another episode of On the Clock. On the Clock is presented by our friends at Titan Bat Company. If you're looking for the highest quality, handcrafted wood bats in the game, Titan Bats has you covered with premium maple, ash, and birch game bats in 10 different models and colors to fit your swinging style. As you're gearing up for the spring season, Titan Bats is the perfect option for your next wood bat. In addition to game bats ranging from youth baseball to softball to men's baseball, Titan Bats also offers award bats that make the perfect gift to celebrate a teammate, coach, or baseball fan in your life. Check them out at titanbats.com. Use the code JB15 for 15% off your order. All right, it's Monday, March 3rd. This is On the Clock. You're Just Baseball. College and MLB draft podcasts. Be sure to like, subscribe, whatever you need to do to find us on whatever platform you listen to make sure you're getting all the latest episodes from us. I'm Jared. We got Tyler out in Richmond, Virginia. How's it going down there? It's been cold. Oh, you're muted. Or I can't hear you.
Oh,
there it is. Oh, he's back.
I was. That was a little embarrassing.
We had Tyler just talking to himself to start the podcast.
I do that all the time. It's fine. But yeah, no, you nailed it. Cold. And it was 70 yesterday. So, in the words of Monty Taylor earlier today, I want my blanket.
Yeah. You should have brought a heated blanket down there with you.
I asked for that. So on my Instagram story, for anybody that does follow me, I did ask for a heated blanket. Nobody gave it to me. So kind of just sucked it up, enjoyed the elements a little bit. The sunshine was nice, at least, because it did make it feel just a little bit more warmer. But outside of that, like that was a little brutal. And I don't know how Monty's holding up. I think he might be thawing right now. That's why he's not here. But I know he was in the trenches today as well. So
yeah, you'll notice Monty dished us tonight. He's also in Richmond, Virginia as well, but didn't cross paths with Tyler apparently because apparently he just doesn't want to talk to us. So it's fine.
No, I'm pretty sure Monty does hate me a little bit on the inside. And in which like
I avoid Tyler.
I feel like everybody does to me at some point. Maybe that's just like the not the introvert in me, but like the pessimist in me, maybe. I think it's probably the best way to put it.
Although Monty's pretty pessimistic himself.
He is, but
unless it's about Gardner-Webb and Pitt, then he's like optimistic all the time.
But hey, it's a fun pessimistic. That's the good thing about it. Like there's humor. There's humor to it. With me, there's just this.
Yeah. I was like, wait, what? Did you freeze? No, but no, he's still there.
No. That was the bit. That was the bit.
Yeah. We want to get into some MLB draft updates for you. Since it's kind of been a while, we've talked about the MLB draft a little bit, but we're 3 weeks into the season now, and there's some guys who've really kind of popped off the board. Tyler, I know you've seen a few guys. You were seeing Penn State, Stony Brook versus UNC this weekend. But let's talk a little bit about last weekend, I think? You saw Korbyn Dickerson, Devin Taylor, the Indiana Hoosiers. We got to talk about Korbyn Dickerson, I think, just to kick things off. I mean, that guy has gone absolutely absurd to this date, and he's slashing 426, 508, 852. He's hit 2 doubles, 7 home runs, 22 RBIs, 9 walks. He's putting up some insane exit velos. I think we saw that he had a double at 115.9. Talk about what you saw with Dickerson.
It's loud is probably the best way to put it. Like, I don't want to make it sound like I'm like trashing Louisville for not playing him, because there's probably something behind the scenes that we aren't privy to that may have caused that. And that's something like that's a different story. That's something completely different. Like, but like going into last summer, like the summer ball adventure he had wasn't the greatest. It was like a 269 batting average. He hit a couple home runs, but nothing like popping out on the page. What he's doing right now, Indiana, is popping off the page.
Yeah.
And like I was talking with Joe Doyle about this earlier on his podcast, Overslot, which, by the way, go check his stuff out because Joe Doyle is amazing and deserves a lot of credit for the work that he does because he's just an absolute grinder.
Future guest Joe Doyle.
Yes, we actually do need to get Joe on this podcast. Like, I should have mentioned that to him earlier, but we were getting pressed for time because of Zoom kind of has that like time limit
Yep.
thing. So we're being like pushed off, but we definitely need to invite him at one point. Just he's such a good dude. He really is. Anyways, tangent aside, but talking about Dickerson earlier with him, it's just really toolsy. Like that's really what it is. Power, you mentioned it, the max exit velo is around 116. He had home runs at 107 and 110, I do believe, against the teams that they faced at USA, which I think were Harvard, Fordham, and it was Northwestern, which was weird because they're in the same conference, but non-conference conference play, I guess, is probably the best way to put it. But like, I don't know, like I've said it before, and I'm going to continue saying it because the USA backfields are insanely hard to homer at because they're not only does the ball not fly, they're regularized field sizes. They're not. You'll notice some college fields like they're shorter down the line, they're shorter to center field. Like the backfields are normal size to a major league or minor league ballpark. What Dickerson was doing was just it was two opposite field bombs at 107 and 110 that went over 415 feet, and it looked like he was swinging a twig. It's probably the best way to put it. And like I think I mentioned it earlier too with Joe, is like the hands are a little noisy, but the swing plane is beautiful. Does a good job of getting under the baseball and producing backspin, and it's just really loud. I think he could play center field. It's good defense there. There's good speed as well. Like looking at what has transpired with him over the past year, not getting the playing time at Louisville, going into the portal, going to Indiana. Now he's the 2-hole hitter, or no, sorry, he's the 3-hole hitter behind Devin Taylor. In the lineup that Indiana has, like Devin Taylor's 2-hole, Dickerson 3, 4 holes Andrew Wiggins now because they finally put him into the lineup more consistently. Then you have Jason Oliver, Tyler Stony, Jake Hanley. All these guys hit, and Dickerson really sticks out like a sore thumb in that lineup. And I use sore thumb as a good way to describe him because it's really been impressive. And looking at what we can probably put a grade on him wise, like second round isn't out of the question.
Yeah,
I think he's legitimately playing himself into day one draft pick status here. And I think already at this point, if he continues doing this at the level that he's playing right now, going into Big Ten play, because they start this week against Penn State in Happy Valley, you're looking at a guy that could really force his way up boards very quickly. And he's going to be very well represented when we get to our top 200, which is coming out in a couple weeks.
Yeah. And I was going to say just I was thinking about this because Monty and I were talking about Gavin Kilen, and we'll get into that performance later at Tennessee. But like, imagine this Louisville team if they still had Korbyn Dickerson, like what he's doing now, and Gavin Kilen. Like that lineup is already pretty decent, but you add those two dudes in there, like that would have been a fun time.
You look at what else is in that Louisville lineup. Like Matt Klein has like a 500 on base percentage or something like that.
Yeah.
Let me double check just to be on the sure side. Like Zion Rose is obviously Zion Rose. Like, really, first off, really impressive by Louisville to keep that kid, because I thought he was destined for the portal.
Yeah,
as well. Like shouts to them for making him, or not making him, but keeping him in their hands. Like that's really impressive.
That kid's good, man. 2026 guy.
Yes, and like looking at what Klein's done here, where's his career numbers? Because it's not showing OBP on my end.
Yeah.
Oh, okay. Here we go. Hitting 395, 511 OBP, slugging at 579 with a home run, 2 doubles, triple, and a casual of 6 walks to 4 strikeouts at the moment.
That's nutty.
That's pretty good.
Yeah. That's pretty nice. I love it. Talk a little, I mean, because Devin Taylor was there as well. And he got off to kind of a slow start the weekend before out in Arizona at the Sanderson Ford College Classic in Surprise. I know he kind of turned it on when you saw him, but what did you see there?
Yeah, so I think the first night, which was a Saturday night, it wasn't the greatest showing. Like he walked 3 times, which was good. Yeah. Like he's not striking out. He's producing run value for that Indiana lineup, but there's 2 other at bats where he struck out, and he had 2 kind of soft grounders. Come up to Sunday morning, 10 a.m. It's cold out, and mind you, we were just couple days removed from snow. So he goes up. I think he did opposite field double, opposite field home run at 104 off the bat. I never got the double reading, but then he did pull side triple at 108, and it was really impressive. And he did well the next day too. He was putting the ball in the air, doing a good job. I felt like a few of them could have been home runs if they were back at Indiana's home park or any other college park. To be honest with you, I think the biggest thing looking at what Devin Taylor is at this point in time, a fully maxed out guy that can't really play center field, despite the fact that there is some decent speed in this profile with decent athleticism.
Mm-hmm.
But he's really going to have to mash to the next level just to be a left fielder. And that's the biggest thing is like there's not a ton of projection here. It's fine value-wise because like you look at what he's done the past couple years, last year being the first Hoosier to hit 20 home runs in the season since Alex Dickerson did it in 2010. He produced a lot for Indiana as a freshman. There's a track record here. And another thing to kind of point out too is like he might be a platoon bat, maybe not like I don't want to make it sound as bad as what James Tibbs could be because James Tibbs last year were pretty bad on the platoon side. As much as you look at him being a first rounder, like his OPS was half of what it was against righties that it was against lefties. Like it was weird. And Devin Taylor might have that issue as well. I think somebody posted it in reply to one of my videos of Devin Taylor on Twitter, where the backside kind of collapses. So he's going to have some issues with stuff away at the next level.
Yeah,
and I think that's true. Kind of looking to see how the back leg kind of collapses underneath him as he goes to swing. Like he'll handle inside stuff fine, but anything away, you get a lefty that can just land sliders away from you at the next level. It's going to be a little tough. So I see the issues there. I do also think it's pretty fixable.
Yeah.
So you can get some more value out of that, but projection wise, there's just not a ton there. But you're not mad for the track record and what you have there tools wise. Like it's still pretty good.
Yeah. I love Taylor. And for all you listening, we do have an interview with Devin Taylor, like incredible kid too. So you got to go check out that. You're also at Stony Brook versus UNC. You saw Eddie Smink, who is kind of the big draft prospect probably for Stony Brook. And then the other guy I want to get into is Kane Kepley, just because it looked like it was a barrel party for him. But let's start with Eddie and what you kind of saw from him on the mound.
Yeah, so Eddie's a little interesting because like he's a 6 foot. His list is 205, but my man has thunder thighs. Let me tell you, like it's pretty impressive what he's got down there with his thighs. Like I thought I had big thighs. I'm just a thigh appreciator, by the way. If we're putting it out there, it goes both ways.
That. Tyler,
go
appreciator. Gonna click that. Tweet it out.
Oh, sweet Jesus! Someone's gonna say something about that, but like, I don't know why, but like, my thighs are pretty big, thunder thighs, and I don't know why. They're the first things that stuck out to me whenever I got to see like the body of Smink on the mound. So, as somebody with big thighs, I have to appreciate.
Okay, yeah, we'll let you live with that.
Okay, cool. Now that I've explained myself for being very weird on the podcast, you can definitely see what makes Smink a draft guy. Like it's a lower slot, low release height kind of fastball with carry upstairs. There are some UNC data guys that they tend to sit behind home plate. There's like a little cutout area directly behind it. They got TrackMan and everything, and I can hear them going, "That's a really good fastball." He's sitting 90, 94. I think he may have touched a 5 once or twice. Nice. But he was really getting swings and misses at the top of the zone with the fastball. Secondary command kind of wasn't there, and really just wasn't landing the slider for strikes like you would expect him to. And I think that's what killed him ultimately was like guys were kind of seeing that he's not landing the slider, so let's hunt fastball. If it's fastball middle, go for it. And that's what Kepley did. Like he had 2 singles off the fastball, both to the opposite field, just slapping it the other way. And that's the big thing is kind of cleaning up the command with him. But there's some interesting stuff there. Like the fastball itself is pretty good for what it is. He might be a guy that you look at like middle now day 2, which would be like 10th to 11th round kind of value. Maybe even a little bit earlier if guys want to go into draft strategy a little bit. But it's just right now there's so many unknowns with this 2-day draft now as to what's going to happen moving forward. Like overslot deals are going to be really, really difficult to pin down with how quickly everything's going to be moving.
Yeah, it'll be interesting to see how that kind of plays out as well. One guy that didn't seem to be fooled by Smink is Kane Kepley. Talk about him. Like that video you posted, it was just like everything just seemed to be barreled. Like that guy just seems to make contact all the time.
Yeah, I think he had a contact rate of 90% overall last year at Liberty. So you're looking at a guy that like he's 5'8", 180. Like he's not getting any bigger, but it's really good barrel control. It's really good hit tool, and the speed really plays on the base pass. He can be aggressive with it, and he's a really good center fielder. Like we look at what UNC's had the past couple of years with Honeycutt manning center field for 3 years, and Kepley beat out Tyson Bass for this position. And the way that it's been put to me is like if Kepley wasn't here, Bass would be the center fielder, and Bass can hit the ball at like 115. He did it earlier today.
Yeah.
But with Kepley, it's such a good table setting like approach profile to him that there's value there, even if you're looking at it now as like, oh, okay, he's Tommy Hawk. Tommy Hawk was pretty good for Wake Forest during their World Series run. But it's definitely it's going to be at least 40 power at best. Like it's not a ton of power. He'll run into a few of them every once in a while, but it's a really good hit tool. He'll use the whole field. Really just likes to use the speed on the base pass. Like I said before, it's a fun profile for what it is. And I think there's definitely guys that are going to be looking at him at the end of day one, maybe the beginning of day two, where like we need someone that can stabilize the top of our lineup. Here's a guy. He could even like fly through the minors pretty quickly if everything works out. Like it's that kind of bat, and I think it's having that high floor is pretty valuable for a guy that you know what he is and you know what he's capable of, and now you get to see it over a full season in the ACC.
Yep. I love it. And it's kind of cool to see those mid majors. Like they have to kind of prove themselves, right? When they go to the ACC or like things like that. And another guy I want to touch on, I want to go into some kind of biggest risers. I picked two here. You can kind of go off. There's other guys you think of, but one's Daniel Dickinson. And this is another guy who's, again, absolute contact party for him as well. Just very impressive, highly coveted guy out of Utah Valley. Goes to LSU to play for head coach Jay Johnson. Had some of the most elite contact skills last year. Now he's slashing 361, 531, 694. He's got 3 doubles, 3 home runs, 20 RBIs, 6 walks, 7 hit by pitches as well. So like, it's just a dude who gets on base. He's a grinder. I think the biggest question marks surrounding him were kind of if the power he showcased last year at Utah Valley was real. He's kind of showing it early on and tapping into it. And then the question was like, what could he hit elite pitching, right? He's playing in Utah Valley. Like the competition isn't as high. Granted, we're not in SEC play yet, but he has hit the ground running at LSU.
Yeah, and it's not even like LSU's playing bad competition either. No. You know, I think they were at Frisco this weekend. And granted, yes, Omaha and Purdue Fort Wayne, it's not the greatest competition, but like he's held his own this week. And to build on your point with the power, I think he's even hitting the ball harder than what he was last year at Utah Valley.
Yeah.
Which like I know there's like some weird misread in our data set where he's like his max exit velocity was like 122, which is nearly impossible for a guy that's his size. But like he's getting closer to that 110 barrier with his max EVs, and that's impressive in its own right. Like this is a kid that, going back to what he was as a high school, baseball player, like comes from Richland, Washington, kind of a short, stocky, chubby kid, doesn't have a ton of body definition. Doesn't have a ton of offers either. Goes to Utah Valley, turns into this kind of beast and really leans out. And now he's in the SEC and proving to be a really valuable bat in this LSU lineup. Like, I really do think that he's pushing his way into maybe not a first round type of bat just yet. Mm-hmm. I want to see how he handles SEC play before we do any kind of like determination on round for him. But he's definitely in that CBA to early second round for me right now. And I think he's definitely got a chance to push his way further upwards if he continues this into SEC play.
Yeah, and not to keep plugging our interviews, but also have an interview with Daniel Dickinson. So if you want to check that out, again, he was another like awesome kid. Like the responses he gave were kind of just you could tell how much he cared about the team and how much he cared about winning. Like I think the quote that really stood out to me, and I think he repeated it this weekend as well, is like Jay Johnson called me. He's like, I didn't go and see anybody else. He's like, I knew it was LSU, and he talks about that on the podcast a little bit as well. It's like he wanted to go win. Like he cares about his personal career as well, but like for him, it was just all about winning. And I think I love that mentality as well.
Yeah.
Last guy I want to talk about talking about winning here. I think we have to talk about Liam Doyle, right? It has been insane stuff. Like just the things that he's putting together this year. And we talk about like guys coming off the transfer portal. I think the talks were like Cam Fisher was the number one lefty, but Liam Doyle showing that like he was the number one lefty. 3 games so far, he's got a .61 ERA in 14.2 innings pitched, giving up only 6 hits, 1 earned run, and has struck out 34 batters. I think the first outing was like 14, and then he was at 11 and then 9, I think is how it went. It's just been absurd. The fastball, I think I saw Joe Doyle's tweet about this of like how it was, I can't remember what the words that he used. Oh, a hell-seeking missile of a fastball, which I think describes it perfectly.
It does. And the way to kind of put into perspective, like how rare of a fastball shape this is for Doyle, like he's generating upwards of like 20 inches of vertical carry with 10 inches more of run to the pitch. And like, if you're trying to find a comp for anything like that, it's pretty much impossible. Like, there's not a ton of guys that are able to generate that kind of fastball shape that he's able to. And to even build off that, like the splitter flashes really well. I've had some guys put a plus on it, even though he doesn't throw it a ton. And I think there's been some improvements with the slider and cutter as well. I think some guys prefer the slider over the cutter long term. The biggest question for me with Doyle, and this is something that we've spoken at length about in group chats and whatnot, is do you think he's a starter or a reliever? Because there's a lot of effort there to get to I think he's averaging like 95, 96 on the fastball now, which is wild considering he was a low 90s guy last year to kind of start there. But it's a lot of effort, and he's really been fastball heavy to start the year, which is, fine because his fastball is probably the best one in college baseball right now, to be quite honest with you. But, does he provide more value than like a good comp is Alex Vesia? And Vesia's provided good value for the Dodgers. Like he's won a ring. So it's not a knock on Doyle whatsoever. Like Vesia is very valuable for what he is. Now, Doyle is going to get every chance to start at the pro level, in my opinion. And I think he should. I think when you look at what he's got, like if that splitter continues to progress throughout the year and it starts to consistently flash plus, you improve the spin, which is honestly pretty easy to do in a dev team. And we'll talk about this later with another guy that I saw this week, but like having that foundation with the fastball is key in development because changing fastball shape is really, really difficult and it's very volatile. Because you mess with fastball shape, you're playing with a lot of fire. And that's just, you have to find the perfect shape for a guy to make it work. And there's a lot of release characteristics to work out with. Any similar change is either going to be detrimental for a guy or it pays dividends. And more often than not, it's pretty detrimental. So looking at what he's got, like don't change any of that. It's an outlier shape. You keep it as it is, but you can improve secondaries and turn him into a legitimate starter. That's a win. But as of right now, I think Doyle is probably like starting pitcher 5 or 6 for me right now, behind like obviously Arnold Bremner, and Bremner's another guy who's lost a bit of like shape to his fastball to start the year, but he's starting to turn the corner a little bit, luckily, which is good. Kyson Witherspoon is probably pushing his way into the top 20 picks, and now like Patrick Forbes. We talked about it. He was our spotlight guy last week. Patrick Forbes has really put himself into prime position to be like starting pitcher 4 on the board.
Yeah, I mean, I think the top five, you can't really go wrong. There's some really good pitchers. Of course, Jimmy Arnold being of course, easy number one. But
Yeah.
um, so I want to transition a little bit into fallers, and I only put one name on here because I think it's going to help us transition to college baseball talk as well. Jace Laviolette. It's been a struggle. He had his first weekend series where he hit 3 home runs, and since then it's kind of just been a little bit disappointing. And I think that goes for the whole Texas A&M Aggies team. I'm sure Coach Early and the rest of them will say they're not happy with how the season's gone either so far. But let's start with Jace, and then we can kind of transition to the whole team at large. But what have you seen kind of in his game on where the struggles are really coming from?
So the biggest thing that's kind of stood out to me in watching some of the film is the swing's pretty stiff now.
Mm.
You know, it's pretty grooved. It's only one swing that he's got. He's not as adjustable as what he was last year. And I think that's the biggest thing for the issues here is like with how stiff the swing looks right now, it's really tough for him to adjust. And I don't know if that's because he's added weight or the body is kind of just caught up to him or what, but it's really alarming to kind of look at because you look at a guy that had 1-1 viability coming into the year. Like everybody's got this guy, you know, looking to be the best college bat in this class. And now I think I can make an argument to say like Ava Arquette's jumped him.
Yeah.
I don't know if Summerhill has yet, but I think he's getting closer with every day now.
Mm-hmm.
So looking at, you know, what's been going on here, if this continues in the SEC play where he's got a K rate of 37%, alarms are going to be blaring.
Yeah.
And I think the best way to put it is like, I think we're already starting to see a point where guys are starting to hit the panic button a little bit. Like they're spamming it. Like this is definitely an issue. And I think the thing that helps Jace's stock here is how weak the class is behind him.
Yeah.
Like we talk about Ava, we talk about Summerhill. Like those two guys are the only ones with real cases to have jumped Jace at this point. Because Jace is putting in above average run times, can play center field in a pinch, like it's 70 raw power. Even if he doesn't hit right now, like that's still pretty valuable in this kind of class right now. But if it's any other class, I've mentioned it earlier with Joe Doyle, was if you put him in the 23 class, is he even a first rounder at this point if this continues? So, like, I think at the end of the day, if this isn't fixed, I think Jace might just end up being outside the top 15 or 20 picks. I think outside the first round is a bit of a long shot right now, just from looking at it from this chair. Like,
Yeah.
does it happen? I don't believe so. Could it happen? I'm not ruling it out. But unless something changes, it's going to be a long year. And I think this really translates well into the next segment of just A&M as a whole.
Yeah. Well, you look it up and down that lineup, and I'm just kind of looking at the stats through 9 games right now, and it's like Gavin Cash is hitting 148, Blake Binderup is hitting 167, Hayden Shots hitting 188, Jace is hitting 214. Then you have like Sawyer Farr, who started a few games, he's in 154. Grahovic, before he went down with the injury, was hitting 227. And then you have like Bear Harrison, who started 4 games, and he's hitting 0. So like the entire team hitting wise is struggling up and down, and they're hitting 233 as a team. That's not good, and you need a lot more from that lineup. The pitching staff's been fantastic. Like Ryan Prager shoved, Miles Patton has shoved, Justin Lampkin has shoved. Like the rotation has done really well. They're not scoring enough, and then like we kind of talked about it pre-podcast, like once they get to that bullpen, the bullpen just kind of explodes, and then Texas A&M ends up losing games they shouldn't be losing. For you, what do you kind of need to see in that team to turn it around? I got to imagine it's offense, but
Yeah, just need to see more stability with the offense. Like, obviously, losing Grahovic for the year is a tough thing. And even while we're talking about it now, like, Caden Kent's gone yard twice tonight.
yep. Cash did
Um,
too.
Cash finally went yard. And then I think right now it's a 6-3 lead or something.
Yeah.
But they've lost 4 in a row before tonight. Really just, I think they got shut out by Oklahoma State last night. And it really just boils down to the offense not producing. You know, looking at what it was to kind of start the year. It was already slow, but then you get to this week and start facing good competition. Like, what was it? They lost to Arizona the other night on Friday, who Arizona's been probably one of the hottest teams in the country the past couple weeks.
Yeah.
Oklahoma State shuts you out, and right now you're playing Rice, and you can make an argument that like Rice does have some quality pieces, but also Rice is probably the worst team at this tournament.
Yeah, they're not the old Rice team that used to just win games all the time.
Yeah. So, like, I think using this Rice team right now as a way to kind of get back into shape is a good thing for them. Like, we look at NC State last year, they get whitewashed in Jacksonville, to put it lightly, but then they sweep Canisius at home.
Yeah.
Granted, they almost didn't do that, but, like, it was kind of a wake-up call for that team because the offense just basically fell asleep in Jacksonville last week. So, this having these kind of games kind of does help a team. Like, gets you out of that mental fuck, gets you out of that negative energy, and kind of focuses on, okay, we did something positive. Let's focus on that and continue building those positives.
Yeah. Well, you also talked about the depth of this team too, right? And they lost Graham Grohovic. You wrote an article about this and kind of what it meant for the Aggies. But this is a guy who was potentially a 1-1 pick in 2026. He's out for the entire season. So, like, I think you're right. Like, this team needs to get hot. But now that, like you said, their depth is also getting tested.
Yeah, and I think that was my biggest question mark coming into the season, which is why I put Tennessee at 1. Freshman recruiting class, man.
Yeah.
That was the biggest thing for me. Like, Levi Clark has turned it on to easy mode this year. Manuel Marines look pretty good. Jay Abernathy's turned into a pretty solid table setter for them. In A&M, kind of looking at what they had, like Sawyer Farr's not really produced all that well. Terrence Keels looks really good, though. I'll give him credit where credit's due. Terrence Keel has been pretty solid to start his career. But it's just a lot of question marks there for me. And I had Tennessee's recruiting class above A&M's for me personally. Like, I thought it was pretty impressive what Tennessee was able to get to campus. And that was kind of the separator for me.
Yeah, we got to talk about Tennessee because this team is absolutely on fire. Everybody was like, oh, they played Hofstra, they played UNC Asheville and Samford to start the season. They also outscored those teams like 100 to 5, something stupid. It was like 90 runs to 5 runs or something. Then they go into this same tournament. Were they in the same tournament as A&M? I believe they were.
Yes.
They just didn't play A&M. Beat Oklahoma State. We didn't have them ranked, but people have them up to number 16. 10-run ruled Rice. And then they go and beat Arizona, who's just been white hot, has won 7 straight games, and they beat them 5-1. We talked about Liam Doyle earlier. This entire team is just very, very good at baseball. I want to talk about the offense a little bit. Gavin Kilen, absolutely ridiculous this weekend. The slash line is just dumb. He went 11 for 18, 9 runs, double, triple, 5 home runs this week. So it wasn't over. Like, he had one more game on Tuesday where he hit a home run. Had 4 home runs over the weekend. 8 RBIs, 3 walks, stolen base.
Mind you, 4 home runs in the major league ballpark.
Yes, big league ballpark.
This is not. I've seen people complain about Lindsey Nelson being a short porch, and it is. Like, don't get me wrong, but that's just the state of college baseball right now. A lot of these fields are like that. They've now just gone into Minute Maid. Well, not Minute Maid anymore, but like, I'm going to continue calling it Minute Maid because I'm used to
Daikun Park or Daikun Park or something.
I'm going to butcher it. So, so we'll go with Minute Maid, but like, they've just been really, really impressive this weekend. Like, Levi Clark put a ball on top of the railroad tracks and left the ballpark today.
SEC Freshman of the Year, potentially.
Freshman. Gavin Kilen hit the ball at 110 the other day. And Gavin Kilen, I don't think has ever hit a ball at 110, to be honest with you.
He's not a huge guy.
No, he's not. He's very much a middle infielder that's very lean, probably is the best way to put it. But being able to hit the ball 110 like that for his size is pretty impressive. And he's really turning a corner for me, man. He looks really good. I want to look at the backup data just to make sure he's not swinging as much as he was last year, because he had a really high chase rate because he swung the bat like 55% of the time.
Yeah.
But he looks really under control, really good right now. And that's just that whole Tennessee lineup, man. Like, Andrew Fisher as much as he's kind of been hurt to start the year a little bit, still producing.
Yeah, and he's
You
like
know,
the
it's
worst
like
hitter in the lineup right now.
yeah, and that's just and he's still hitting good.
Yeah, he's not. He's bad. I'm not saying like he's the worst, as in it's like a bad thing. Like he's just everybody is hitting like 400 except him.
Yeah, and I'm going to bring up his stat line just to be on the safe side. I know he went yard today.
Yeah,
Um, so
he's got 267 batting average. But he's got 2 home runs, 4 RBIs, and 2 doubles. Like he's still producing.
he's still producing. Only 5 strikeouts on the year.
It's pretty good.
Which is
yeah.
Actually, he went like almost a whole. He went a whole week and a half without striking out.
That's pretty good for him.
Yeah, that's like I'm not complaining at all about that.
And it's like we're talking about all these guys, and there's still like Cannon Peoples, Jay Abernathy, Hunter Ensley, and we're not even talking about Dean Curley, who's like potentially like the best player on the team draft wise. Like,
yeah,
it's kind of nuts.
Here's the fun thing on Andrew Fisher: 11 games played, 15 walks.
That's nuts. That's pretty good.
Is that hashtag good?
That's hashtag very good.
You know, and like looking at Dean Curley too, like 359, 11 walks, 6 strikeouts. I think 4 bombs on the year. He had a 2-home run game the first midweek of the year against UNC Asheville, I believe.
Yeah.
So like this whole lineup is just insane.
Yeah. Then you go to the rotation, and then we talked about Liam Doyle. Nate Snead has been filthy. Marcus Phillips, who just got added to the rotation this year, has been absolutely disgusting. He struck out 20 batters in 13.1 innings with a 1.35 ERA, and he's throwing fuzzballs out there too. It's nuts. Like 98 coming out the hand.
He's been averaging like 96 after the 6th inning or something like that. It's ridiculous.
So dumb.
And by the way, AJ Russell's back.
Yeah. 1 inning, 3 Ks. Hello. Out of nowhere.
So what was it? Before the year, they said he wouldn't be back until at least halfway through the season.
Yeah.
And now he's pitching a midweek in like week 3 of the year. Excuse me? It's probably the best way to put that is like, hello.
I'm back. Glad to be here.
So, yeah, I don't think Tennessee's going anywhere anytime soon. And like, I think another guy that we're kind of overlooking here on the hitting side, sorry to go back to it, but I wanted to talk about him. Reese Chapman is kind of breaking out this year already.
Yeah, he's been good.
He's been waiting his turn. He's been there for 2 years already. Didn't get a ton of playing time, but he was usually like the first guy off the bench. Right now, he's hitting like, I think it's 389. He came into this weekend hitting over 400, has 2 home runs, 4 walks to 8 strikeouts. So like the strikeouts are still kind of a concern. He's had 6 in the past week.
Yeah.
But like this is another guy that's waited his turn in the wings at Tennessee and is now getting his chance to really produce. So this it's so deep on both sides of the ball for them.
And then you got like Dalton Bargo coming off the bench hitting like walk-off home runs and coming up in clutch situations. So you just got everybody going. And you have one of the, if not the best coach in college baseball, and Tony V at the helm. Like,
yeah,
it's fun. Good for Tennessee. I do want to talk about 2 other teams in that tournament, though, that really made some noise. We saw both of them actually at the Shriners Showdown. Both did not perform very well at the Shriners Showdown. Oklahoma State a little bit better. They got that win, I think, over Texas. Was it Texas? No, it wasn't Texas. They got it over. Who did they get it over? Arizona, maybe?
I think so.
Yeah.
It may have been Arizona.
And then Arizona got swept out of that weekend. Arizona went 0-3 that week, and we dropped them out of the top 25, and they were like, screw you guys. We're going to win 7 straight. Also beat Texas A&M. Also beat Mississippi State. And they're rolling. Like Summerhill's hitting. Mason White's back. The pitching staff has looked better. What do you got on the Wildcats right now?
I think they finally got out of their slump a little bit, getting home and facing that San Diego team, which like San Diego's got some interesting guys. And they just whitewashed them at home, man. That's probably the best way to put it. Come back against Rice to beat them this week too. There's a lot of grit to that team, and I think they've really bounced back well after having that basically cataclysmic first opening weekend. Like, it could not have gone any worse for them. But like Owen Kramskowski got 8 runs earned in like 2/3 of an inning to start his collegiate career, kinda. But he's bounced back well. He's had 2 decent starts since then, and Smith Bailey's looked really good.
Mm-hmm.
Colin McKinney struck out 6 the other night against Texas A&M, and I think it was like 4 2/3 or something like that. Their pitching has kind of turned that corner now, and now the bats are waking up. Summerhill's hitting, like you mentioned. Mason White looks good.
Adonis
For what
Guzman has been on
like
fire.
Guzman's insane right now. Easton Brayfogel's looking really good too.
Yeah. Yeah, I like Easton Brayfogle. I know that's a guy that JD Cameron on our team is like really high on, but he's looked good.
Oh, and the Frenchman down there too. I think it's Morant. That's his last name.
It's Morant. Mathis Morant.
Like, good old little JUCO French guy is hitting at the bottom of that order and doing pretty well.
Yeah. And then you got Oklahoma State, which is the other team. They lost to Clemson in Texas, beat Louisville when we were there. Then they went and lost a midweek to Texas State. It seems like Texas State's just beating everybody in midweeks these days. They get their confidence back by facing UT Arlington, and then they come into this weekend. They lose to Tennessee, fine, but they blank Texas A&M, and then they get a much-needed win over Mississippi State. This team just looks better. I think the biggest concerns that I've always had with the lineup is like it's very swing and miss heavy, right? And so like everybody's got to be on top of it. Like Colin Brueggemann, Nolan Schubart, these are guys that are going to probably strike out a lot. Same with like Aiden Miola and a bunch of others. So they all have to be on and for this team to go, and they've been on. So they're 6-4 now. They bounced back from that. I know you have a couple guys that you've put on your draft radar for this team too.
Jason Jones is looking like a pretty legit draft guy right now.
Yeah. Guy who struggled in his first, was with Texas at one point, I think?
Arkansas,
that's right. Yeah. Yeah, he's been looking good. And then you have Youngerman, who's the other guy on your draft board, potentially.
Dude, fastball value go burr.
Yeah, I remember sending you that Savant data during the Shriners, and I was like, this is a fun.
Dude, like, again, foundation with the fastball is key in development.
Yep.
And that's what Youngerman has, because he gets a lot of backspin on the baseball, tons of carry. Guys just cannot touch it up. And I think that's pretty valuable on the pro side. So he will be probably at the back end of the top 200 for me. I for all I know, I might be the only guy in the country in on him. Yeah. And I don't think I am. Because I really do believe that there's a ton of value in this kid, and I think he can do pretty well in the minors.
Yeah, I like it. We got to go to some upsets. Wake Forest. They lost to Maryland and Princeton. They did wind up almost 10-run ruling of Maryland today. I think they won 9-1. Not a great look for Wake Forest right now. Of course, they don't have the Chase Burns, the Rhett Louders of the past. They got a new rotation that looks pretty good, but they've just kind of struggled to get it going with the bats. Maryland is kind of that team that if your pitching's not on, they're going to take advantage and score like 15 runs. They might not have the pitching to keep themselves into the game, but they're going to put up runs and you got to score them in order to get a win off of them. So what do you got on these two Maryland losses or two Wake Forest losses?
Probably growing pains is the best way to put it. Matthew Dallas didn't really have the greatest start the other day. Joe Arriola looked pretty darn good today too, despite the fact that past couple weekends hasn't been really all that sharp. Command's been a big issue. But really, I just don't think they have a ton of offensive firepower at this point. Like, obviously, you got Conrad, you got Houston, and Cade Lewis is a guy that's really turned the corner too. I think he looks really good. Yeah. Same with Jack Winay. Like, Jack Winay looks a lot better. But getting that consistently has been tough for them. And, the opening weekend, they were dominant.
Yeah.
And, like, going into, I think it was a Lunsford pitching matchup on Friday, I do believe. Like, Sean Episcope was toe-to-toe with Lunsford for a majority of that game. And I think Preston only lost 3-1. Like, that was a really gutsy performance from Episcope. And I think Episcope's another guy that's going to really, really shock people in draft circles. Like, that's a legit arm for an Ivy League team. But you go into today, you lose the game after losing to Maryland yesterday. Having that second game today to kind of help revitalize that lineup was key, because going into the week losing your last 3 games after a close one on Friday night, not the greatest look going into ACC play. But
no,
I think it's just a little bit of growing pains going into the ACC. I think they'll be fine. I want to say, I can't remember who they get this week, actually.
I'm not sure either. I haven't looked at the schedule. But
I'm doing that right now. So come on, internet. You got this. You got this, internet. I believe in you.
Tyler using that hotel internet. Not great.
Is it Notre Dame? It is Notre Dame.
Oh,
they did get Notre Dame this week.
Notre Dame's been sneaky good.
They are. Estevan Moreno is a pretty sneaky power bat.
Yeah. FYI, before we keep going on, Wake Forest hidden shot just hit a 3-run home run, and it's 12-3 Texas A&M over Rice. Offense is lining it.
Okay, yep, this is the game where they get the confidence back.
Yep, love it. I'll just touch on Maryland a little bit because I'm going to see them quite a bit this year. Like I mentioned, the teams, it's very homer heavy. They've hit 21 home runs as a team already this year. They're going to have a lot of swing and miss in that lineup, like Aiden Hill, Hollis Porter. Those guys just got a lot of swing and miss to their game. Hollis Porter struck out 18 times already this year. Yeah, so it's just like it's one of those teams that's going to score a lot of runs. Pitching staff's got a lot of question marks, and the defense has not looked great. So I think that's kind of the big thing for them. If they want to win games, they got to shore up the defense and the pitching. But like for them, who kind of got off to a slow start, getting that win over Wake Forest, I think is huge for them in terms of momentum. I know they lost 9-1 in the second game against Wake, but to go in there, really dominate Princeton for 2 games and then get that win against Wake, that should help them going into conference play next week against UCLA. Last thing I want to talk about, and then we'll talk quickly about the players of the week to kind of wrap things up, is Vanderbilt. Losing to USC and UConn. I don't really know what to make of this team. I feel like they have a really great game against like UC Irvine when you're like, oh, this team's pretty good. And then they go out and dominate St. Mary's, which they should. Go and beat UCLA. And then they lose 3-1 to USC, 6-2 to UConn. What are your thoughts on this Vanderbilt squad?
This is not your mother's Vanderbilt squad.
No,
it's probably the best way to put it. And that's not a diss to like Korbyn himself, because I think Tim Korbyn is still one of the best coaches in all of college baseball. He's turned that entire program around from the first time he stepped foot on that campus. But they kind of just haven't recruited all that well the past few years. It's a lot of interesting pieces and some weird ones as well. And the lineup just doesn't have a ton of big boppers. Like obviously Brody Johnston is a big piece. Braden Holcomb just hasn't really lived up to the hype just yet.
Yeah.
Like obviously RJ Austin's the big part of that lineup as well. But after that, like Colin Barksey, I don't know if Matthew Polk's still there. He might be, but I remember him being like a piece in that lineup.
Rustin Rigdon starting there.
Oh, okay. So that's the guy who I was thinking of, Rigdon.
Yeah.
But it's just there's not a ton of firepower offensively, and pitching wise, it's not all that great either. Like, Katie Thompson's obviously a good piece. Cody Bowker is interesting metrically. Like, this is a guy with a really low release height and is going to like light up Stuff Plus models.
Mm-hmm.
But it's a lot of inconsistencies, a lot of just having trouble finding the strike zone is probably the best way to put it. And to me, when you look at the SEC power rankings, I see a team like South Carolina being better than Vanderbilt at this point in time. Like, I was talking to a scout about this the other day, but like South Carolina is a lot more disciplined this year than they were last year. With Maneri being in there, and it's just there's a lot more focus. Naroki, Nathan Hall, Petrie looks really good right now too. It's a really interesting South Carolina squad this year, and they've got some interesting pitching as well. Like Jake McCoy looks really good. Dylan Eskew is looking good. Like I understand I think they got swept by Clemson this weekend.
Yeah,
but like I think looking at what South Carolina brings to the table, like
They could be better than Vanderbilt at this point.
I think they could be,
Yeah.
and I really do hope maybe that is wrong. Like I do like Vanderbilt for what they are.
Yeah.
Again, love Coach Korbyn a lot.
Hmm. I think the
But
thing oh, sorry.
go ahead.
Yeah, I was gonna say I find interesting about Vanderbilt's pitching staff this year is like they've posted a good team ERA at 3.64, but you don't have that guy that's getting the bulk of the innings, right? You have like JD Thompson who's in double digit innings, but no one else in that rotation is in double digit innings, which makes me feel like Corbin's trying to figure out that rotation in that pitching staff, and that there just isn't consistency there, right? And
Hmm.
so it's going to take they're trying to figure out like who's going to be the dudes, and it's still hard to figure out, but the pitching staff still somehow doing okay, and it could be like the lack of competition versus anything, but even the losses they have, it's not like they're giving up 10 runs or whatever. They're losing like 3-1 or things like that. And that goes back to your point of the offense, right? Like we talked about Maryland having 21 home runs, like Vanderbilt's only got 7. And
Yeah.
you don't want that at this point of the year from your offense if you need some thump. Like they're hitting at a good batting average, and like so they're getting on base, but they just don't have that guy that can really drive people in. So interesting team to really follow, I think, like you said, in SEC play to see if they can figure some things out or turn some things around. But we're running out of time. We're right around the corner from SEC conference play, and so
Yep.
it's time to figure it out now, in some sense for them.
Absolutely. And you mentioned SEC play starts not this weekend like ACC play, but it starts next weekend.
Yep. Yep. You got one weekend left. And who they have, I wonder. I'm curious. I'm going to look this up.
Oh, what's funny is the William and Mary people were talking about this earlier. I think they go to K-State actually. But
Xavier. They got Xavier.
is that who they have?
Yep.
Okay.
Yeah. At home. And then they go to Auburn right after that. So welcome to SEC play.
That trip to Auburn might be a little tough.
Auburn, Texas A&M, Arkansas, Florida, Oklahoma is there. Georgia. It doesn't get easy. Ole Miss, Alabama, Tennessee, and then they finally get Kentucky, which is probably at the end of the season for the last series. You know how we talked about Auburn's schedule last year? Vanderbilt might have that schedule.
Yeah.
They don't get like a breather until Kentucky, and Kentucky's like decent.
Yeah, like Kentucky's coming off the College World Series appearance.
Yeah, and that's like the easiest series they probably have, unless you consider Alabama, but Alabama's red hot right now.
Alabama looks really good.
Yeah, they're pretty legit. I guess you could say Texas A&M's like the biggest break they get, but watch Texas A&M get hot, and then next thing you know, you got to go to, you got them at home. You got to bring in a hot Texas A&M team and try to get yourself going in an SEC play. Not gonna be fun for Vanderbilt.
No, Vandy Whistler is going to have a lot of whistling to do.
Yeah, it's going to be a fun time. I want to wrap up going into players of the week. Don't want to spend a ton of time on these because we've talked about one of them already a little bit. But we have to talk about Ryan Rembis. Portland threw a perfect game, 9 innings pitched, no hits, no runs, no walks, of course, 12 strikeouts on a Tuesday. So it was against Seattle University, not the biggest competition, but he threw the first perfect game in Portland University history. Still cool. Like if you're throwing a perfect game at D1 level, it's pretty awesome.
Absolutely. And he was coming off of like 3 days rest and had never pitched past like the 3rd or 4th inning in his career.
Yeah.
So
it's a perfect game.
Just like going out there in the midweek, you probably don't have a ton of expectations for yourself other than like obviously you got to help the team win. And then it's like, oh hey, by the way, 12 Ks, perfect.
Yep.
Like that.
Whatever.
That's really awesome. Just like that's the best way to put it. Is like it's really awesome to watch a guy, you know, who's not had that kind of success at the collegiate level, you know, coming off a short rest and is making history.
Yeah.
Like I think that's the first Portland Pilots perfect game in school history.
Yeah. It's nuts. And he did it on 90 pitches. So it was pretty efficient.
Nice.
Yeah. It did a Greg Maddux game, basically.
Okay. I was not aware of that.
Yep.
Oh, man.
90 pitches. Seattle, you not having a good time out there. Other guy we're going to talk about, Dallas Francis Jr. Monty not here for this discussion. I can't believe it. We got a player of the week from Gardner-Webb, and he doesn't even show up to the pod. Like, where's your loyalty, Monty, to Gardner-Webb?
Come on, Monty.
What are we doing out here?
We literally have you in a Gardner-Webb hat on the promo pieces for every single episode.
Yep, and he's not even here.
Can't even show up for us on that.
What are the chances Gardner-Webb's going to get a player of the week again? And Monty's not here for the only one that they might have all season. Sad.
Should have stayed at home today, Monty.
Yep.
Should have stayed home, man.
But Dale Francis, 4 games, 10 for 15 this week, 8 runs scored, a double, 5 home runs, 16 RBIs, 2 walks. He got intentionally walked with the bases loaded. And he got the Barry Bonds treatment. Hit by pitch, he slashed 667, 736, 1733 over the week. He said that this week gave him confidence. I saw in an interview. I'm like, yeah, I hope so.
Oh, man, it just 4 home runs in a game. I don't care what conference you're in or what level or anything. That's really impressive. And I think he mentioned like that was the first time that he ever had like a multi-home run game too. I could be mistaken on that.
Yeah.
Pretty special, man. That's again, both like really good stories on both ends here with what's his name?
Ryan Rembis.
Rembis. Okay, I was going to say something else, and I couldn't remember what his name was. But for both of them, man, that's college baseball at the finest, man. It really is, and that's what makes this game so good.
Yeah, I mean, for a guy to do that, and Monty was saying that Gardner-Webb's head coach was, when Monty went out there for the site visit, was just talking up Dallas Francis like the dude absolutely rakes. And yeah, I would say so. You're going to hit 4 jacks in one game, you rake.
Right.
You can give him the label already.
Yeah.
Last guy we got to talk about, Gavin Kilen. We talked about him already when we talked about our Tennessee conversation, but again, 4-game stretch over the week, 11 for 18, 9 runs, double, triple, 5 home runs, 8 RBIs, 3 walks, stolen base for a 6'11", 667, 1611 slash line. Pretty good. And I don't know how much more we can talk about him. He only hit 4 home runs in 2 games. Not as good as Dale Francis doing it in 1, but it took him the course of 2 games to do it.
Come on, Gavin. You go to a big league ballpark, you have to do the Scooter Jeanette. You have to hit 4 home runs in the ball game.
Draft stock going down because you didn't hit 4 in 1 game.
It's stagnant now. It has to be in 1 game.
Yeah. Awesome stuff for him. That kind of wraps it up for us. In terms of things we have coming out, Monty's Musings is out for week 2. He's going to have week 3 coming out. We'll have a full recap of all the college baseball news and stories from this week going out as well. We have interviews with Merrick Houston that went out a couple weeks ago. RJ Austin went out last week. We have one coming up this week with Devin Obi from Georgia. Other things that we're working on, we're getting some more guys on for interviews throughout the season. So we'll have some more players. Tyler's got a couple lined up. I got a couple lined up. Tyler's going to be dropping a top 200 board for the MLB draft here in a couple weeks. We're ready for conference play. No more seeing the fun schools that get 10-run rules. I'm ready for some real cool competition. So, yeah. What else you got going on, Tyler? Any final thoughts before we wrap up?
Well, I will say this about the top 200 board. Expect a lot of changes.
Yeah.
At least compared to what we had on both the prep and the college boards for the top 80. But if you're going to try and compare those boards to what's going to be coming out, there's a lot that has changed in the past month plus since those boards came out. So be prepared. Like, it's going to be very fluid going through the rest of the season. On top of that, excited to finally see Stanford and Cal this upcoming weekend. The new 2 ACC legendary teams themselves. Shout out ACC legend Katie Ledecky.
Love it.
But finally get to see them, and then obviously SEC play opens up after. Going to be down in South Carolina for Oklahoma. So the Weatherspoon Twins going to be in person. I think Oklahoma's sneaky good this year. So,
I really like that Oklahoma team.
Out for the
Eastern
Sooners.
Carmichael.
Yeah.
That's fun. I love it. I'm actually going back out to live looks. I will have the first Big Ten series, UCLA versus Maryland. UCLA's got a lot of fun 26 guys for the MLB draft. Maryland's got a couple here and there for the 25 draft, but then you got Chris Hakopian for 26 MLB draft, so that should be fun. Kyle McCoy on the bump Friday night. Get a little Cole Lehman action, Lehigh versus UMBC. So that should kind of wrap it up for my weekend. But yeah, we're excited to bring you more content, and then until next time, we'll see you.